Across the Park podcast is proud to be sponsored by Globe Gas and Heating. For the best kitchen and bathroom renovations, boiler servicing and repair, and central and underfloor heating in the Northwest, head over to globecentralheating.com and quote Across the Park for a free quote. Welcome back to Across the Park podcast, another unplanned podcast. What is going on? We are signing players before we are even back at pre-season. So thank you so much for joining us on another unplanned Across the Park podcast. And I'm delighted to be joined once again by my friend Hal from the Sheffield Utd Way. We had him on last season before the big game at Bramall Lane in September. Hal, thank you for rejoining us. How are you doing?
You know, that game at Bramall Lane was probably one of the highlights of the season, and that was in September. I mean, that says it all, doesn't it?
You know you're bad when Everton are the highlights. You know, honestly.
Jordan Pickford in that game, what a legend.
It was the last minute save, wasn't it? An injury time where he'd done a double save at that big home end. Yeah, God.
Right. And
Seems
I'll tell
a
you
lot.
what a legend, only because he represents England as well.
Yeah.
And, I want to see that sort of thing from him for the national side. Yeah.
I'm sure we will at some point, the way we're playing. I'm sure he'll be called into action at some point. Before we get into it, the show is about the signing of Illiman Ndiaye, who we've just signed, and a lot of our fans are really excited by it. And a lot of the social media is showing a lot of clips in a Sheffield United shirt. So I want to get your opinion, but just briefly before we get there, looking back on last season, you spoke to my partner Gary on this, and you said on that show that going into the season without Ndiaye, you thought was dangerous. It did turn out that way. In hindsight, was it always going to turn out that way when the window, closed in August? Or in hindsight, could you have done things a bit differently last season to avoid relegation?
You can always do things differently, but if we kept Iliman Ndiaye, it wouldn't have made any difference in terms of staying up. There was so much more that we needed. It's great to have a player like Illy, and he can win points on his own, but our issues were at the back, really. We just couldn't stop goals going in, so I don't think Illy would have made too much of a difference there.
Mate, honestly, when you signed Mason Holgate, I just thought these are doomed. And I don't like slagging our players off too much, but Mason's made it quite clear he doesn't see his future at Everton, and he said a few things in return. But yeah, when you signed him, and you also had, I'm a big fan of this lad. He lived the dream, Tom Davies, but again, player of a certain level. So just before we move on from Tom, how is he doing? I know he had injury problems there. Are you looking forward to seeing Tom in the Championship this season?
Looking forward to seeing Tom, full stop. He's been injured so much. Hardly saw anything of him. Saw more of him on videos, doing interviews and on the training ground. I mean, hardly seen enough. What I did see was a okay. Some misplaced passes when he came on as a sub. I remember, I think it might have been Brentford. It's hard to remember. But didn't see enough of him to formulate a proper opinion. 6 out of 10 at best.
I wish Tom all the best at Sheffield United. He's an Evertonian, a local lad, injury problems, and he's someone who, during his development, a lot of our fans said, send him to the Championship and it'll be a breath of fresh air for him. So I'm really hoping that Tom comes good for you and you see the best of him and bounce back up. We're here to talk Illiman Ndiaye. What can we expect from him?
He's a live wire. He's a trickster. He's much stronger than you might think for a flair player. He's one of those players that if he loses the ball, he won't be happy with that. He'll make it his mission to win that ball back for you. Like how Paul Scholes couldn't tackle, but he had long-range efforts, a good volley on him. Well, Illy can tackle, and he's got those in his locker now. He's not obviously a Paul Scholes quality, but he's a very, very skillful player, and he can run with the ball. He can run out defenders. He can take them on. He can beat a man. He can put a cross in. He has got that long-range shot on him. He's a nice, tidy finisher. Okay, he's not the best in the air, but he's also scored goals with his head. He's brave, and he'll get the fans on the feet if he's got the right players around him. I wouldn't necessarily say he needs service, because Illy will make his own service. If it's not happening, he'll just grab that ball and go, right, let's do this myself. And we saw him do that in the Championship on numerous occasions. Now, the Premier League's a different beast. He will find that harder. He'll take time to get used to the speed of the Premier League, particularly after playing in France. I'm not saying the French game is slower, but it's a bit slower.
Different level, isn't it? Yeah.
It is a different level, and he'll take a bit of time. He didn't hit the ground running at Marseille, which is a surprise. I think the pressure was on him there. Marseille fan, not a Marseille boy. He's not from the area, But yeah, he'd have wanted to do well there, and I think it was very difficult for him, and it meant so much to him that the pressure was on, and he couldn't quite deliver. I saw him have a stinker of a miss actually, and just one of the. I only watched 3 Marseille games, in one of them.
One question I'm really interested to ask, and the answer could be 2 or 3. What position do we get the best out of him? Is he a 10? Is he a wide? Is he a 9? What is the best position for him?
Well, when he first burst onto the scene, he was very good complementing Morgan Gibbs-White, and Morgan and him would both play off of a striker. When he first was in the youth setup, he would often play in central midfield. He can play as a striker. I think if you see him play for Senegal, you'll see him on the wing. Okay. But I personally think he's best as a 10, and that's where you get the best from him. But you could almost say, and it doesn't really exist anymore, but a free role, and
right, okay,
just let Illy be Illy, and then great things can happen, and really, really creative.
Whether Sean Dyche will allow that to happen, I don't know. I think he's going to have to be. Yeah, I think he's going to have to be maybe more disciplined than he was at Sheffield United, perhaps, in relation. And it's refreshing to hear off the ball he does work hard. That's a trait that, I mean, we had a player on loan last season, Arnaud Danjuma, and we had a Bournemouth fan on who said he'll win you games and he'll do this and that. One thing Arnaud Danjuma didn't do is he didn't track back, he didn't work hard, and we didn't see him much. It's refreshing to hear you say that Iliman does those things. Look, I'm quite excited by him. If you look at the Everton setup, we play Dominic Calvert-Lewin and we play Abdoulaye Doucouré as almost a 10, and it's a battering ram that works hard, and it'll keep coming at you. It'll win the ball back, and I think it's nice for us to have something different, someone who can maybe turn on a sixpence and run and maybe create. Is he a selfish player, or is he a team player?
I mean, he's a team player in the sense that, like I said, if it's his fault that he lost the ball, he'll make sure he gets it back.
Right.
Doesn't always get it back, but he'll certainly try. If he does run at players, when his first season with Sheffield United, he was certainly less selfish. But when he became recognised as the star boy, and he really is, he was our star boy.
Yeah.
Oh God, it still hurts. He would sometimes maybe take a shot or two that you think he possibly could have passed it there, but who cares, because he would often finish. So it didn't really matter. What I would temper this excitement with is that his confidence has taken a massive hit, and it's the first time in his career that that's happened. So we don't know how Illiman Ndiaye reacts to that. He wanted it to work out in Marseille more than anything. That's the club he loved. It's the club he supported. And you and I, if we'd been good enough at football and got the chance to play for, respectively, in Everton and Sheffield United, we'd have given everything.
Of course.
Well, imagine then that didn't work.
Yeah.
How you'd feel. And we have to be aware that we don't know what this Illy is going to be like. This is an Illy that might be tail between legs and might take a while to get that spark back. So be kind to him, give him time, because trust me, the player that's in there is worth the wait.
It's a great segue into my next question, really. I've only got a couple more because I do appreciate you coming on a lunchtime. He seems to me from the outside on my research and what I've done that he probably needs a lot of love, whether that be supporters or coach or, our director of football, Kevin Thelwell, has came out on the press release straight away and said, we wanted to sign him and Sheffield United sold and we couldn't get the deal done. We're delighted to have him. He's a player we think a lot of. There's a little bit of excitement around the fan base already. I'm hoping that's gearing up to making him feel loved. Is he a player that needs to feel that? Is he a player that needs to feel like he's maybe the main man?
I mean, I almost wish you'd signed him just because you might have given us more cash, and also the fact you signed him now and the way that you've managed to get the deal done means we don't get that percentage sell-on fee, from what I understand, which is an absolute disaster. And we also had first refusal, but clearly we couldn't match the figure. Yeah, he's probably a player that would prefer the arm around the shoulder than a rollicking.
Yeah.
And Paul Heckingbottom was great with youth players, and Paul gave him his debut in the Premier League against Leicester City away and blooded him. And actually, before Paul came in, Illy was nowhere near the first team setup. Absolutely nowhere near. And we don't know if we don't know. We don't know. But it worked out in the end, and we eventually got to see him. And Paul Heckingbottom I think, got the best out of Illy with the way that he manages young players, and that's definitely the arm round the shoulder method.
you came on and you almost started the show by saying it's a jump, it's a different level to what he's played at. The question I've got really for you is, I completely agree, it is a jump, whether it be Championship or whether it be the French Ligue 1. He may struggle at first, but is the potential there that he may struggle at first, but there is a Premier League player in there? Do you see in 2 or 3 years' time, if he stays with Everton or moves to a different Premier League club, he can establish himself? Is the ceiling high enough for him to do that?
Yeah, because I would say this, and I mean this. He's the best player I've ever seen play for Sheffield United.
Wow, okay.
Now that, you might think that, well, that's not a very high ceiling. And I suppose in some senses, I don't support Real Madrid or Barcelona, but we've seen good players at Bramall Lane. We've seen Kyle Walker. We've seen Dominic Calvert-Lewin, James Beattie. You've seen these players as well. These are good players. And Illy was really special. And we saw a whole season of Iliman Ndiaye full of confidence, playing his best. And it was frightening. And he would genuinely be the best player. And opposition fans would always say that. And he looked like he was a Premier League player playing in the Championship. So clearly there's a Premier League player there. But that time away in France, I don't think will have helped him. Now, I might be wrong. And he might actually look at it, rather than sulk, he might go, right, I've got a point to prove. And actually he might hit the ground running. And you might go, wow. To stick with him, but it will all come together.
I hope you're right. And our pre-season, if you look at our games in pre-season, Coventry, Salford, Sligo, maybe that level of team, without being disrespectful, if he has a great pre-season and he can take them to the Premier League, fantastic. I really appreciate you coming on. I've just got one more little question for you off topic, and it's just appeared on me about 10 minutes before we started recording, that on this day in history, Phil Jagielka moved from Sheffield United to Everton. For me, an Everton legend. Similar to you, a Sheffield United legend, or certainly one of the best players you've seen?
Yeah, of course. Absolute Blades legend. Yeah, I remember it well. We went to Everton for 4 million, and then we got James Beattie for 4 million. I could have seen a swap deal being a slightly easier way of doing that, but there we are. That's how we did it. Yeah, Jags, of course, for us, played right back initially, central midfield. I think it was actually central midfield, right back, centre back, goalkeeper. I mean, just incredible. Jags could play anywhere. Scored one of the best goals we've ever seen at Bramall Lane. And then another of the best goals, one against Leeds, an absolute rocket, one against Middlesbrough, an absolute rocket. Jags is a player I got to know quite well as a person as well. And what a great guy. I got to know his family as well. Just fantastic. And I was very happy to see him not only go on to play well for Everton, but play for England, which is something I predicted he'd do after he moved to centre-back. I was Norwich away, played at centre-back. I remember we went and beat them 3-2, down to 10 men. Iffy and Nora got sent off early doors. And Jags just controlled it at the back. And before that, he'd been a central midfielder who was average and became a centre-back who was incredible.
Yeah, look, the Jagielka and the Ndiaye are not directly linked, but they're close enough for me to have faith that it's going to go in the same direction. Phil did take around 6 to 7 months, and then once he established himself and he realised he was good enough for it, he was unbelievable for a number of seasons. I would kill to have that in this scenario. Val, thank you so much for joining us. Any Sheffield United fans who have hit the hashtag and they're in the YouTube hole, tell them where to find you, what's coming up on your channel.
Cheers, Ian. Sheffield Utd Way on YouTube, on Twitter. Also got our award-winning audio podcast. Check that out. Leave us a nice iTunes review. What's coming up? It'll probably be something to do with the takeover whenever that happens.
Sounds good. I'll be tuning in. I really do enjoy your content. Any Sheffield United fans, we have put the link in the description. Click that, head over, subscribe, like, follow the social medias. Any Blues who are watching, we are back next week, back in the studio. We are doing a season review. We have a Kevin Campbell tribute show, which we hope you like. We are recording later in the summer at Goodison Park as we gear up for the final year of the Old Lady. Bring the handkerchiefs. It's going to be emotional with some special guests. Thank you for watching, and Hal, thanks again for joining Across the Park podcast. I wish you and Sheffield United all the best this season, and I hope to record again the following season.
Cheers.